It is still dark, no rooster, no sunrise, nothing kind about this morning at all. What wakes you is a horn, low, flat, and final, rolling across a field of leather tents. And before your eyes are even open, your body already knows what it means. Get up, your feet hit cold ground. Around you, 8 other men are moving in the dark, folding blankets, reaching for boots, saying almost nothing. You are a Roman legionary. This is not a battle. There is no enemy today. It is just a normal day, and by the time this day ends, you will have walked further, carried more, and built more than most people now do in a week. So today, you are not going to read about the Roman army. You are going to live one ordinary day inside it, hour by hour, from that horn in the dark to the moment your head finally hits the ground again. And I promise you this, you will never call your own day long in quite the same way again. Because here is what nobody tells you about the most feared army in history. Most days, there was no fighting. The battles we remember were rare, sudden, brutal, and over. The other 90-something% of a soldier's life was this: waking in the dark, marching, digging, building, drilling, and doing it all again tomorrow. The real Roman war machine was not powered by glory, it was powered by routine. So let's step into one day of it, your day. First, look around you in the dark, at those 8 men sharing your tent. Learn their faces fast, because these 7 are now the most important people in your entire world. They are your contubernium, your tent group, and you will eat, sleep, march, freeze, cook, complain, and fight beside these exact men for years. You share one tent, you share one mule. You share one cooking pot. If one of you slacks, all of you suffer. If one of you falls, the rest carry his kit. The whole gigantic Roman army, tens of thousands of men, is really just thousands of these little groups of 8. That is the secret. You will not march 20 miles for the emperor, a man you will never meet. You will not dig a ditch at midnight for the glory of Rome. You will do it for these 7 exhausted men standing next to you, because they are doing it too. That is the machine. It runs on the man beside you. Hold on to that, because it is the whole story. The next horn calls you to formation. You line up in the gray light, and the day is counted, checked, and inspected. Your kit, your weapons, your face. There is a password for the day, passed quietly down the ranks, so that tonight, in the dark, you can tell friend from stranger. And somewhere near the center of camp stands the thing you will protect with your life, the standards. Tall poles topped with metal discs, hands, and above them all, a silver or gilded eagle. That eagle is not decoration, it is the soul of the legion. To lose it in battle is the deepest disgrace imaginable. Men have marched back into certain death rather than leave one behind. It is also, strangely, your bank, your savings, your pay, the little you manage to keep, are stored right there at the standards, under guard. Your money and your honor in the same sacred spot. Let that sink in. Now, breakfast, and I have to disappoint you. There is no feast. The Roman soldier who conquered the known world ran mostly on grain. Wheat ground and boiled into a thick porridge, or baked into flat, hard bread. Add a little cheese, some beans, a scrap of bacon or salt pork when you are lucky, an onion, olive oil, and to drink, not fine wine. You get posca, cheap wine gone sour, watered down into a sharp, vinegary drink that kills the bacteria in bad water and keeps you upright. It is not a meal you would choose, but it is fuel, and it is relentless, and it works. An army this size does not move on flavor, it moves on calories, carried in sacks, ground by hand, and boiled over a fire your tent group builds every single morning. You are not eating to enjoy it, you are eating to make it to nightfall. And now the part that will genuinely shock you, what you carry. Strap in. On your body, an iron helmet, body armor of iron plates or ring mail, and a heavy curved shield. At your hip, the short stabbing sword. In your hands, 1 or 2 long javelins. That alone is a serious weight. But the Romans were just getting started. Onto a forked pole slung over your shoulder goes everything else. Several days of grain rations, a cooking pot, a water skin, a saw, a basket, an axe, a length of chain, tools for digging, and 2 wooden stakes for the wall you will build tonight. All in, you are carrying something in the range of 30 kilos or 60 plus pounds of gear on foot in the heat all day. Soldiers were mocked for it with a nickname that stuck, Marius mules, because that is what you are now, a mule that can fight. Then you march, not a stroll, a machine's pace, the military step, roughly 20 Roman miles in about 5 hours of daylight, in a long column stretching down the road, dust rising, hobnailed boots striking stone in a rhythm you feel in your teeth. And here is a detail I love. Those roads you are marching on, straight and stone-paved and famous, your kind built them. The army was its own construction crew, laying the very roads that let the next army march faster. You are walking on the work of soldiers exactly like you. Left, right, left, mile after mile, pack biting into your shoulders, the man in front of you the whole of your view. Nobody is impressed. Nobody is watching. This is just Tuesday. 20 miles and the day is barely half done. Because at the other end of this march, you do not get to rest, you get to build. This is the fact that made me stop and stare. The Roman army did not just find a place to sleep. Every single evening, at the end of a full day's march, carrying all of that, they built a fortified camp from scratch. A proper one. You dig a deep ditch around the whole site, pile the earth into a rampart, plant a palisade of stakes along the top, and lay out the inside on a strict grid. Tents here, command there, roads between, the same layout every night, so any soldier can find anything in the dark, half asleep in a camp he has never seen before. And then, this is the part that breaks people's brains. The next morning, you tear it all down and march away. You build a small fortress at night and abandon it at dawn. Enemies were genuinely unnerved by this. Imagine chasing an army that leaves a brand new fort behind it every night, like footprints. That is not toughness, that is engineering as a weapon. And you, aching, blistered, hungry you, are the engineer. Which brings us to the truth about your job. You probably pictured a soldier as a man with a sword. But you, the Roman legionary, spend far more of your life holding a tool than a weapon. When there is no war, and most of the time there is no war, you build roads across mountains, bridges over rivers, walls across whole frontiers, forts, aqueducts, canals, harbors. The Roman army was the largest, most skilled, most disciplined construction company the ancient world ever saw, and it happened to be armed, and it left its fingerprints on the map forever. Those permanent forts had a Latin name, castra. Say it out loud. Now think of English towns like Manchester, Lancaster, Winchester, Doncaster. That Chester, that Castor, that is Castra. That is a Roman army camp, fossilized into the name of a modern city 2,000 years later. People live their whole lives in a place named after a soldier's tent wall and never know it. Blame it on Rome. So when do you actually train to fight? Constantly. Between the marching and the digging, there is drill, and the Roman approach to it was almost frighteningly logical. You practice with wooden swords and wicker shields deliberately made double the weight of the real thing, so that a real blade feels light in your hand. You strike at a wooden post for hours again and again, aiming, not slashing wildly, but placing the point. There is a famous line about all this from a Roman writer, and it is perfect. Their drills were bloodless battles, and their battles were bloody drills. That is the whole philosophy in one breath. You are not trained to be a hero. Heroes are unpredictable, and the Roman army hated unpredictable. You are trained to be a reliable part, to do the same correct thing, in formation, on command, when you are terrified and exhausted and everyone around you is screaming. Your courage is not the point, your consistency is. You are being forged, on purpose, into something that does not break. And that forging had a dark, heavy price, and we should be honest about it. Roman discipline was extraordinary because it was enforced with extraordinary harshness. Minor failures meant extra duties, cuts to your rations, public shame, a beating. And for the worst offenses, falling asleep on watch, cowardice, desertion, the punishments were severe enough that men feared their own officers as much as any enemy. There is one word you still use that comes straight from this world. When a whole unit was found guilty of true cowardice, the army could punish it by selecting one man in every 10 by lot to be made an example of by the rest. 1 in 10, the Latin for that is where we get the word decimate. You say it now to mean wiped out, devastated. Originally, it meant something colder and more exact, a group forced to punish its own, 1 man in 10. You have been using a Roman military term your whole life without knowing what it cost. Blame it on Rome. Now let's talk money because you are technically a professional. You get paid a set wage in installments a few times a year. This was revolutionary. For the first time, being a soldier was a career, a job with a salary, not a seasonal call-up of farmers. But before you get excited, look at what comes out of it. You pay for your food, you pay for your equipment, you pay for your boots, your bedding, replacement gear, the group feast days, and a contribution to the burial fund, so that if you die, there is money to bury you properly and to mark your grave. So the actual coins that reach your hand, not many. A working man's wage, mostly eaten by the cost of being a working man. Held for you, remember, back at the standards. But there is something else in this deal, something you cannot spend, and it is the real reason you are here. To understand it, you have to look past the whole exhausting day, all the way to the end of the road. Because you must be asking by now, who signs up for this? Wake in the dark, carry a mule's load, march 20 miles, dig a fort, tear it down, eat our porridge, fear your officers, and do it again tomorrow, for years. Why? Fair question, and the answer is one of the most human things in this entire story. You do it because for a poor young man with no land, no name, and no future, this brutal, punishing life was one of the only ladders up that existed. Serve your full term, and it was long, around 25 years, and survive, and at the end you were handed something that could change your family's fate for generations. Steady pay, the first you may have ever had. A discharge bonus, a real lump of money or a plot of land to farm. And for many, the prize above all others, citizenship. The legal status of a full Roman passed down to your children. A boy who enlisted as a nobody from a mud-poor village could walk away, if he lived, as a landowning citizen with sons who would be citizens too. That is the trade. You give Rome your 20s, your 30s, your strong years, your health, your knees, a quarter century of your one life. And in return, Rome offers your bloodline a way up and out. It is a hard, cold, and honestly rather brilliant bargain. And millions of men, across centuries, looked at that deal and said yes. But we started in the dark, and we should end there too, because a day is not only its labor. When the fort is built and the watch is set, there are a few hours that are simply yours. And this is where the machine becomes men again. You gamble. Roman soldiers loved dice, and games are scratched into stone all over their forts. In the bigger bases, you go to the baths, because yes, the army built bathhouses on the frontier, hot water at the edge of the world. You honor your gods and you write home. We actually have their letters, real notes from real soldiers, asking after family, sending greetings, and, unforgettably, asking their mother to please send more socks and warm underwear because the frontier is cold. That single detail collapses 2,000 years in an instant. The most disciplined fighting man in history, at the end of his brutal day, is just a cold kid missing his mom. We made a whole episode about those letters. I will point you to it because it will stay with you. And that is the thing I want to leave you holding. Underneath the armor, under the load, under the terrifying machine, the Roman legionary was a young man a long way from home, doing something almost unbearably hard, mostly for the 7 tired friends beside him. The famous army, the eagles, the conquests, all of it was really just millions of ordinary days like this one. The march nobody sang about, the ditch nobody remembered. The pot of grain shared between 8 men who had no one else. And there is something quietly beautiful in that. Because what carried them was not hatred and not glory, it was routine, and it was each other. The discipline that looked so cruel from the outside was also the thing that gave a landless nobody a structure, a trade, a brotherhood, and a future he could never have found alone. They traded their youth for it, and a great many of them, if you could ask, might tell you it was, all things considered, a fair trade. So back to that horn in the dark, now you know what it called men to. Not to battle most days, but to the march, the load, the shovel, the wall built and torn down, the sour wine, the 7 faces in the tent, and a quarter-century traded for a name their children could keep. That was one ordinary day in the most disciplined life in history. And every time you hear about basic training, a boot camp, a professional army with a wage and a pension, a base town whose name ends in Chester, or someone says a storm decimated the coast, you are brushing up against that soldier at his impossible ordinary day. You inherited more of him than you ever knew. So the next time your day feels long, you know exactly who to blame. Blame it on Rome.